All right, so living here in New York, our most common emergency is hurricanes. However, we experience winter storms basically every year, so it's really important that we talk a little bit about that. And having experienced winter storms every year, you might have noticed that not every winter storm looks the same. So to start right off the bat, what do you think is the difference between freezing rain and sleet? Okay, so freezing rain occurs as a quick review, the clouds form of millions of tiny water droplets. And when those clouds form and the moisture builds up and that moisture droplet gets heavy enough, it falls. Well, if it's cold enough outside, when that rain falls, it'll freeze on contact with the ground. And sleet is kind of similar. When it sleets, it will be that same kind of process, that cloud formation, except it's colder higher up. So it freezes a little bit higher, and then when it falls as ice pellets. So what might be a hazard with that? Yeah, so if the roads, if it's falling in freezing rain or sleet, the roads and sidewalks are going to be icy. That can cause accidents and slips and falls. Also, if that ice builds up on the power lines, it can knock out our heat and electricity. How about the difference between a snowstorm, a regular snowstorm, and a blizzard? Great, so a snowstorm is what we typically think of. It's the cloud moisture and that moisture falling and freezing into the ice crystals throughout the air. And we might get a lot of that snow. But what makes it a blizzard is when we get that same amount of snow, but you add winds of 35 miles per hour or greater. And when you add those winds of 35 miles per hour or greater, it can make it really hard to see. It could be hard to see with a snowstorm as well, but blizzard, you get the sideways snow, we call it. So when these things occur, how can we stay safe? Well, you want to make sure that you're staying inside. Pretty much, for the most part, it's just safer to stay inside where it's warm. If you have to go outside, if there is still school, or if you want to just go outside and build a snowman, a couple things to remember is just to keep yourself warm. Our bodies are naturally 98.6 degrees. They're naturally pretty warm. So if you dress in layers, it's keeping all that warmth in, close to your body. So you want to make sure you've got a hat, gloves, a scarf, and all of that to keep that heat in. And you want to just try to cover any of the areas that might be exposed to the cold. Now let's say you're outside and you're building a snowman for a while, and your cheeks and your nose have been exposed. And you start to feel kind of that pain or numbness in that part of your skin. What might that be an early sign of? Has anyone heard of frostbite? Yeah, so that's what frostbite is. So trying to cover all that is best, but if you do start to feel that pain or the numbness, it's really important that you go inside and warm up. How about hypothermia? Has anybody heard of hypothermia? Yeah, so as mentioned with that 98.6 degrees that our bodies are normally at, if we start to lose that body heat, that's the beginning stages of hypothermia. And how might you be able to tell that you're starting to maybe go towards hypothermia? Right, if you start to shiver. So if you start to shiver when you're outside, or again, if you feel that pain or numbness to the areas that are exposed to the cold weather, it's really important that you go inside and warm up. Okay, so how can we be prepared for winter storms? How do we know that they're coming? It's really important to listen to the forecasters, and if they say that a storm is coming in 1 to 2 days, that's when you should start to check on your emergency plan and gather any of the emergency supplies. If the winter storm is going to start in the next 24 to 48 hours, in the next 12 to 24 hours, you just want to avoid travel. If you have to travel somewhere and you were to get stuck in your car, It's really important to just stay in your car and wait for help. If you leave your car, you might not be able to see as well because of that visibility of the snow, and you might lose your way. And then if you're outside and it's really cold, when you go back into the car, you might not be able to properly heat yourself up. So try to stay in the car. And then of course, if the power does go out and there's alternate heating sources, try to avoid using candles. Flashlights are a much better option. And then if you use an alternate heating source like the fireplace, remember to keep things 3 feet from heat to avoid the chance of fire. Now, we're going to do a little practice activity to review some of this information. So we're going to go back. So when I say, it's called winter storm charades. So when I say freezing rain, you're going to freeze, because that's what freezing rain does. When it hits the ground, it freezes. So that's what we're going to do. And then if I say sleet, you're going to go ping, 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 because that's kind of like the noise it makes when it hits our cars or our windows. And then when I say snow, you're going to shovel, like you're shoveling snow. All right, so we'll do this a couple of times. So freezing rain, sleet, ping, 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 snow. All right, good job, everybody. So the last thing I want to talk about is how you can share this information. So I've got a little story about Sophia. Sophia and her family live in an area that gets winter storms every year, so they're used to it. But Sophia, her cousin Emily, is coming to visit them this year. And when she comes to visit, she says, I've never been in a winter storm before. I've only ever seen them on TV. If the power goes out and you lose heat, what do you do? But luckily, Sophia has already taken the Pillowcase project. So she was able to tell Emily all of the winter storm preparedness that we've talked about today. And she also tells her that feeling worried when a storm is going to happen is common. Even grown-ups can feel worried. So it's just important to learn what we call a coping skill ahead of time to help you feel better if you start to feel worried. And thank you for learning about winter storms today.